It is all about intention, and this is late in the 60s when every automaker was rushing to create G-Wagons, Jeep Wranglers, and your Land Cruisers. Suzuki had a different thing in their mind, and this was quite intentional again, as I said earlier, because while everybody was creating huge SUVs, Suzuki was like, guys, why don't we make a small mini compact SUV? And that is the birth of the Suzuki Jimny. But it was not called the Suzuki Jimny back then. Actually, Suzuki made a company that was struggling by the name Hope Motor Company, and they had 50 units of a car by the name Hopestar on 360. And this is the basis of the current Suzuki Jimny. And using these 50 units, Suzuki came up with a series of new generations of Suzuki Jimnys, from the first gen, which had an engine of a displacement of 359, and then later on we had 539cc, and the first one was actually giving out only 29 HP. So that's how serious and low power output the first series of the Suzuki Jimny had. But occasionally the first gen, the second gen, it's actually on the last series of the first gen that the Suzuki got its official name of the Suzuki Jimny. And the Jimny is a name that came out of two executives who traveled to Scotland, and they met a name Jimmy. And through translations, they lost the value of the name Jimmy and came up with the word Jimny. It's kind of what you get in Western when you go to Ikolomani. The white man wanted to refer to that place as a gold mine. And because the lawyers did not listen to gold mine well, they came up with the translation Ikolomani. So that is the same scenario you have in Japan with the Suzuki Jimny. The second gen, the third gen, and it's through the second gen and the third gen that we had a car that was legendary again in the lineup of the Suzuki Jimny that you guys know as the Suzuki Samurai. And ultimately, towards 2018, the fourth generation of the Suzuki Jimny was launched. And that is what you're going to check out today. Arguably, it is one of the most accomplished, technologically advanced, 4x4 capable Suzuki Jimny ever designed. And before we talk about what makes the Suzuki Jimny so special in terms of how it looks, a big shout out and a big thank you to Croton Motors, wako hapa opposite the Waterfront Mall. These cars will be given to us by them, and they have a set of more of these in their showroom. So kindly, if you want one of these, pay them a visit and you'll get yourself an awesome and good deal. Talk to a guy called Kelvin, atakupatia deal fit if you're looking into buying one Suzuki Jimny. Okay, so let's get into why this car is special. And please, if you haven't subscribed yet, it's another moment, it's another opportunity for me to remind you to hit the subscription button and wake notification buttons on, because it's only getting better every day as we get to do this. So let's talk about why this car is special. Number one is the looks. Ultimately, any guy who is looking into buying an SUV, this is the go-to car, because SUVs are meant to be boxy. That's why I consider a Porsche Cayenne not a real proper SUV, because boxy shape is one element of a proper SUV, and this is what you get on the Suzuki Jimny. In fact, that's the reason why it's called the baby G-Wagon. And just to talk about the G-Wagon, the Chinese guys have decided to go ballistic on the Jimny. They've come up with body kits that can literally turn this car into a G-Wagon, or better still, you can turn it into a Defender. And that is one element that is interesting on the Jimny, because boxy shape, angular design, just look at these shapes. Like, this car is dope. Angular, you're just getting right angles everywhere. And look how tall I am, or short the car is, okay? So this is a design feature that is global and phenomenal, and this is one reason why people love this particular car. Now, this one is the Sierra. In Japan, you have this car in two configurations. You can get in the Sierra, which is considered projecting towards a global market, which is different from what you can buy in Japan as the normal Jimny. It doesn't have any other name tag. It's just a literal name, Jimny. And that one does not come with these wheel arches, exterior protruding things, and even this one. So it's bare. It's basically stripped down, and even the engine itself is not the same as what you'll get in the Sierra, because that one comes with 560cc engine displacement with a turbocharger attached to it, because it needs to meet some specifications to be called a Keica in Japan. So just take note if you're buying this Jimny from Japan. And even the roof, you know, it's just different. The front, different. They've stripped it down to meet strict regulations to turn it into a Keica. But let's talk about this particular one, the Sierra. What makes this particular one quite special? And the special word here again, the second thing is, Suzuki were going quite simple on the Jimny, because I wanted to make a car that practically will do anything and everything that a simple guy will want or a simple lady will want. So simplicity is the ultimate sophistication when it comes to the Suzuki Jimny. So what do you get here? This being a 2019 and the fourth generation, there are a few things that are quite interesting. Number one, you get circular LED headlights, which is very, very important for a practical car like this. This one from Croton Motors has come already installed with this front bulba, and it has a plastic padding on it. So in case unapanga ugonga watu, don't worry. There's a plastic padding that will just make sure that gari iko mbele hayumii sana. Or in case you also decide to knock people, you know, but don't knock people because it's not healthy. And this car, again, we'll talk about safety, but that's something that you need to know. So no parking sensors, no nothing. Fog lights to make sure that illumination is perfect. If you go to the side profile now, you get this protruding wheel arch covers, which make this car very, very good again. But looking inside, inside the wheel well, there is no normal cover that we are used to. So you can just see everything. Huko ndani, okay? Again, remember, the word here is simplicity. I don't know why Suzuki were doing that, but probably they are saving some costs when it comes to R&D. You also get the same set of protruding plastic at the rear. Na huku ndani pia, inside the wheel well, there is no cover to protect you from not seeing what is inside there. So I can see my fuel tank, I can see the suspension components, even the exhaust from here. Again, Suzuki, cost cutting or just a design flaw or a design choice? I don't know. Tell me in the comments, what do you think about that? Of course, you also get a plastic padding on the side skirt, which protects the car in case you're going to your off-road adventure. Just look at the ground clearance. You know, these are proper SUV. An SUV that doesn't have this much of a ground clearance, don't call it an SUV. And here I'm not talking about the Toyota Rush. Don't compare these with Toyota Rush, please. Toyota, no, okay, no. Come to the rear. Let's talk about the design structure of the rear. Now coming to the back, again, remember I told these are Sierra, so you can get there the name Jimny Sierra, and I've given the difference. So the normal one that you get from Japan that doesn't have the Sierra name, it simply means that that is a Jimny, a Keica, okay? The design element of the rear is quite interesting. Like, this car was so simplistic and miniature in how the design was done, to the point that the rear bumper had to host your brake lights, and your reverse lights. So they could not fit anywhere here. That's how bad they were. So they decided to fit hapa nyuma. If you're buying this car from other markets, in case you're shipping this car from, let's say, the UK or Australia, you need to know that the design of the bumpers are different. From the Japan in kidogo, okay? But from those other countries, they're slightly bigger. So people actually do that swap. So you can buy these bumpers from other models of those cars and then feed them to your other model of these cars that come with the smaller bumpers to just make this car beefy. Looking at this car on the side, you can see when you're in a protruding engine, if you're putting on slightly tires that protrude on the exterior, you know, they'll fit in and flash quite well. So there's no much adjustment that you'll do in terms of adding extra body kit that makes this car look sporty or aggressive. These are already done for you, because this one is the one comes with a wide body kit. A tail mounted spare wheel. Again, these are things that we're used to when you're buying an SUV. So this hii ni kitu ya kawaida, sindio? So let me not talk about it. But again, the tailgate opens from the side to reveal an almost no practical boot space anywhere. Basically, there's nothing here. You can't store nothing here. But if you put your seats down, then what do you get? You get a very hard plastic surface that now gives you 377 liters of practical boot space, which is something that I will do. There's no way I'll be buying this car to have two people sit on this second row seat, because these are 3-door. So it means this one, the driver's door, the passenger door. Why would I have people sit here? So ultimately, whoever is buying this car, these two seats are always going to be down. And there are people who've done proper investment in terms of turning the second row of seats into a practical adventure space. You know, put there your fridge, put there those things. Then being an SUV, of course, there are design cues that have been done ndani ya hii gari, especially on the second row seat. That is quite interesting. Like you can see exposed, bolts and nuts, just plastic padding to make sure that this car is quite practical. You also get your 12-volt socket in case you have, your exterior air pump that you want to use in case you're going to the Buntus. So that's quite interesting. They've just made this car practical and ideal to use in areas where the buyer of this car is actually intends to use it for. Okay. The third thing that makes the Suzuki Jimny another legend and a global phenomenon, selling upwards of 2.8 million units, of course, is the idea that this car is a complete off-road maniac. It's capable through and through. And how is so? So, in this body and shape, number one, something that you need to notice in terms of how capable this car is to handle off-road terrains is your overhangs. So you have very short overhangs, both at the front and the rear. The departure angle is good at the rear. The approach angle at the front is quite good. Like everything, even the ground clearance, but it doesn't stop there. Mbele gari, you have dependent suspension. And there I mean you have a solid front axle and a rear axle as well. Like all these are tuned down to making this car a capable off-roader. And it doesn't stop there, okay? So you don't get a center diff lock on this car, but you get a rear diff lock, and you can lock these wheels to work together. And that means that if you're going to drive this car on your tarmac, it's not ideal to drive in 4-high, okay? So it's not ideal because of that. So it's ideal that when you go to your off-road slippery places, that's when you engage your 4-high, or maybe the road is slippery and you need to drive at slightly higher speeds. That's when you use your 4-high. So capability, top-notch. Coming to the front, steering rack gari. They are not using the traditional rack and pinion that we are used to. And there are only few cars in this category that still use that. So you're talking about the Jeep Wrangler, you're talking about the Ineos Grenadier. They use what we call the worm gear, hapa mbele, or the circulating balls, which is a set of technologies geared down to making the steering rack or the steering system compact, reliable, and it can handle any abuse that you want to put on it, especially when you're taking these cars to extreme off-road. So hizo vitu tatu zinameki gari inakuwa fantastic in terms of handling off-road capabilities. Now, it doesn't stop there. Of course, the last thing that this car has made possible to have is the idea that you can inua gari further. You know what you have here is what you call a standard ground clearance. But Suzuki has made it possible for you to have a lift kit on this car. You can add a winch pale mbele. You can have the extras like even the snorkel that gives you the ability to have air being sucked from the top. It means it increases the warding depth of this car, so you can take this car to extreme challenging terrains, even crossing rivers. And that is one legendary aspect. The third one that people love about the Suzuki Jimny. Interestingly enough, since the first day the Suzuki Jimny started production, that is in 1970, between then and now, there has only been an improvement in terms of power of 70 horsepower only. And that is what it sets down to the wheels, which is quite interesting. So, as I said earlier, we started off with 359 HP, 359 cc of engine displacement, and we went to 539, and then we went to 800 cc, and then we went to 1,000, then we went to 1,300, and currently what we have under the hood of this 2019 Suzuki Sierra is a 1,500 cc engine by the code name K15B, which is the one that gives you around 100 horsepower, right? And 134 Newton meters of torque. Nothing to write home about, right? But again, that is what people who buy this car want. Because most of the time you guys abuse guys who own the Suzuki Jimnys. Oh, you guys have slow cars. And they're like, they're the most immune guys to any ridicule. They're like, that is why we bought it. because we can afford to buy a G-Wagon, because we can afford to buy a Lamborghini, because we can afford to buy a Porsche. But yes, we still want a Jimny because it makes 100 HP and it can literally go anywhere. That is why. And it's simply the simplest, easiest platform or car to work on. And it costs almost nothing to fix it. That's why they buy the Jimny. So what is so special about this engine? Number one, as I said, it only gives you 100 horsepower. Number two, the design structure here is quite interesting because normally with the air intake, most manufacturers will direct the air to be picked from the front. Meaning if you're hitting a pothole that has more water, or if you're hitting a water puddle and water comes through here, then instantly the engine will suck in water and it will be hydrolocked. But here you have a design where air is being picked from the side. So air intake may feature kabisa. So meaning if you hit water, even with or without a snorkel, there is very, very high chances that you'll not easily get water into your engine, which is good. But also, it makes it quite easy to redirect and just install an aftermarket snorkel on this side and suck air through the top and into the engine. Quite easy. The engine simplicity, design, like there's nothing much talk about. The ECUs where you can see it. The spark plugs are here, you can see there is no plastic cover covering anything. So access your engine ni easy, straightforward. Catalytic converter yako ndo hii hapa, oxygen sensor ndo hii hapa. You can literally fix this car with a pliers and maybe just 2 spanners. Nothing much to talk about. Quite easy, quite simple. Now, paired with this engine, you can get this car with 2 options of transmissions. You can either get it with a 4-speed auto, which is the one that is in this car. At the same time, you can get it with a 5-speed manual. So it is your choice. I prefer guys who are not conventional in terms of how they like driving their cars. They feel they don't want to have a lot of control. Buy yourself this particular one, the 4-speed auto. But if you like control and you like switching gears, then get yourself the 5-speed manual. Arguably, it's also the one that will give you better fuel economy because this will give you an average of anything between 9 to 12 kilometers per liter, depending on how you drive it, the conditions that you're driving it in, and the location that you're driving this car, and how long or which distance are you going to. And before I talk to you about what are the common problems that you might face if you choose to buy yourself the Suzuki Jimny, I wanted to tell you that there is another engine option that you can get on this car. If you decide to import this car from Japan as a Kei car, then you can get a 350cc engine in this car, which is turbocharged. It will give you, better fuel economy and worse performance, worse than what you get on the 1500cc, because this particular one, people are saying it can give you anything between 12 to 15 seconds, 0 to 100. But let's talk about the engine problems. The engine problems that you get from this car, or the problems that you can get on this car when you plan to buy it, are absolutely zero or nothing, except few plastic things here and there that get tired and old with time. But literally, this is a bulletproof engine. It's a bulletproof car. It's a car you buy and drive without worrying about anything. And finally, down to practicality and the utilitarian aspect of this car, of course, you have your roof rack. But there is a warning. So best with what Suzuki says, that this roof rack can only carry a maximum of 30 kgs. So watu mnanunua Suzuki, please don't do extra. Don't put more than 30 kgs. And the good thing with this particular one, this one from Croton, you already have the front bulba, then you have the roof rack already installed. So kazi ni kununua, slap on your stuff and drive this car to wherever you want to go. 30 kgs, 30 kgs. 30 kgs while it's driving. I know guys are like, what if nataka kwenda kwa bundus and I want to put my tent here so that I can sleep. Yeah, when this car is static, you can certainly do more than 30 kgs. That means you and your mpoa, you can set up a roof tent na mnaweza lala hapo. But mtatoshea? Mtatoshea kweli? Of course, the obvious thing that you notice when you get into the Suzuki Jimny is how huge that door is. You see how huge that door is and how far it opens up. It makes it easier for you to just jump in like, ona you one Toyota. Look at this. All this. So of course, the second thing that you notice is this one. And you guys remember this? This is what you get on the G-Wagon. So it's a handle that your passenger princess will be holding on as you guys maneuver those off-road terrains. But again, coming back to why most people buy the Jimny. You know, a Jimny is that car. I'll give you a very good example. You know, when you can afford to buy a gun because you need to protect yourself against bad people. And you see, bad people will not come always. So you have a bazooka, or you have, you know, a 316, or is it an M16? It's an M16 or an AK-47, and you have it in your house because you know some days you will need it, because there are people who will walk into the compound, they need you to shoot, okay? That is the same setup you get with the Suzuki Jimny. So people who buy this car don't buy it because they want to go to an off-road adventure every day, but they're buying it because they know there is a day that will come that they will need the off-road capabilities of what this car can do. And that is the same thing that we see with even these big SUVs like the Prado. You know, guys don't buy them and go to off-road. They buy them and drive them on road, you know, take their kids to school. But they know if they have a ceremony in Mount Elgon and they need a car to go there, they know they don't need to hire a different car to go there. They can just go there and attend a wedding, attend those awesome, beautiful moments that they need to enjoy with that car. So that is the same setup you get with the Jimny. Now, being a simplistic car, and Suzuki are going for something quite simple and elegant, you get a lot of plastic, okay? Again, for the price tag that this car is, I know the taxes here make this car quite expensive, because this particular one, Croton are requesting 3.6 for this unit. But they said if you go there and invoke my name and ask Kelvin, they'll give you a discount. They can give you this car at 3.5. If you just go tell them, conversation dometutuma. So this, you're going to pay 3.6, and reasonably enough, it's because the taxes on this car are also higher. Imagine kama Suzuki Swift sahi kanatoka na 2.2 from 1st of July. So you can imagine why this car is 3.6 million Kenya shillings. But for the price tag, you get plastic. Again, Suzuki do not want you to have something that will break quite quickly, so you get a lot of plastic. But those plastics that will last forever, okay? Those plastics that you can abuse, do everything. And you get that even on the doors, okay? And they have these Allen key design screws that are bolted everywhere to give you a retro vibe and a retro design, which is quite nice. I saw these in the Ineos Granidea, and they picked that again from the Defenders, which is quite awesome. Even the new Defenders, the 2020 Defender, 2021, they also have this design of screws and padding going on. But let's come back to the interior. Away from that, this is a seat cover, so don't get lied to that this is leather, but you have a cloth interior here. And something that you get on this car in terms of safety is you have side airbags. You have an airbag for the passenger, you have the airbag for the driver here, and also have a side airbag. Coming down here, again, you have tactic buttons that are well outlined, and you have your window. You can raise your window through here, and also that one, you can bring it up and down through this. Then you have your traction control and your hill descent. Hapa katikati, you have your AC controls or your climate controls. Something that is so beautiful. For this car, being a utilitarian car, there are a few things I didn't expect, but you have your auto climate control. So meaning you click on that, this car can read the temperatures. You can set the temperature you want this car to be in. And once the cabin of this car attains that temperature, then the auto climate shuts off. And it will come back again to keep that same setup running in a loop. So that's how you use auto. But the other cars, you just get a manual bit, okay? And then you have like a small digital display here to just control all those things like mode, and you can change where the direction of the air coming from, and you have your AC button. Quite simple, quite easy. Of course, you have a digital infotainment system here, which is touch, okay? And this one here, Suzuki says it comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but I couldn't be able to test it because, you know, it's still in Japanese and I've not converted it. So that is subject to confirmation, but it's a Panasonic, and they say it does that. It is very simple, it's very rugged, it will do everything you want it to do, okay? And it will never die, okay? So that is something you need to know. Now let's come down here. You get a traditional gear shifter. Again, they want something rugged that can survive abuse, and that is what you get here, okay, which is good. And then something else that is so cool and important is you get a 4x4 gear selection lever. Now this lever goes directly down to the transfer case. So hii gari iko na transfer case. I said earlier, mbele tuko na diff, nyuma tuko na diff, but we don't have a center diff on this car. But this one controls your 2 high, it controls your 4 high, it controls your 4 low, okay? And I told you, because this car is designed differently, unlike other cars in this lineup, like even the Prado, you can drive comfortably in 4 high. You can't do that with this, okay? So they say 4 high and 4 low is strictly meant for slippery terrains, be it mud, be it grass, be it gravel, be it snow. So that is when you use 4 high and 4 low for extreme torque. And 4 low, when you push this car to 4 low, it means you can drive this car just like a normal car, but the gears are halved. So meaning if gear ratio, the same power you'll get from gear number 4 in an automatic, when you put in 4 low, it is halved. So it's like you're driving a gear number 2, which is quite interesting. So it makes this car basically torquey and aggressive to be able to maneuver those difficult terrains. Of course, to wrap it up, most Jimneys, you'll find 2 buttons upper. There is no, one thing that I heard is there is no ability to have an armrest here, but there are aftermarket extras that you can buy that can give you an armrest and even USB charging ports, but you don't get that. You just get 2 cup holders and a storage compartment here, but you can store your phone here, which is quite convenient. Let me just put there the phone and you guys can see, the phone will fit in quite well. Then you have heated seats, both for the passenger and the driver. And these are buttons go up, which is, Suzuki do these things nowadays that are very interesting. Coming back here, you have your traditional gauges. So you have your tachometer and you have your speedometer. Alafu pale katikati tuko na digital screen that gives you a lot of parameters like your fuel economy numbers. And that is where it gets into it, because if you pair that digital screen in the middle with what Suzuki called Suzuki Safety Support, and it's packed out here, you can see it here, there's this component here. If you look at it from the exterior, you see cameras facing the front. You get things like lane departure, which I have here, front and rear collision mitigation, which is quite interesting. You also have the ability that this car can read speed signs. So ukienda place zone ya 30, the camera at the front will be able to read the zones, and it will warn you on the cluster through the digital display and tell you at this point you're supposed to be driving 30 or 110 ukiingia bypass, right? Which is quite awesome. Let's talk about safety. This car is rated at 3-star in terms of safety rating, and that is down to, I believe, the way this car is designed, the boxy shape and the elements around this car. This car is not safe for a passenger. It means if you knock them out, if you knock passengers, they will literally get injured or sometimes even fatal, could die, okay? So that's why it was denied. So it's rated at 3-star. That is something you need to know. But I believe it's for what it delivers in terms of power. This is not a car you'll be racing down the road. It's a car you drive on your daily, moving around, taking your kids to school, going for shopping. Ini garuna nayo marikiti. For those guys who love shopping, fresh food stuff from Tao. Najua marikiti na kungana barabara noma sana. Nyanya zimepasuliwa kila mahali. So in case you need a car to move you from nyanya zimepasuliwa, believe me, this is the car you need to buy, because it serves both the purposes. You can go out for an adventure drive, at the same time you can use it as a perfect daily. And talk about practicality, this particular Sierra is a 3-door. So let's see how practical this thing is. So you just move your seat mbele, and then you use this caliber here to bend this seat at the front, and voila, it reveals enough space that you can tuck in a pet, maybe watoto. I don't believe normal human beings will ride at the back of this seat. It's not the ideal place for you to pack in human beings, because there is no AC vent, there is nothing. Like literally, Suzuki meant to have nobody here. They just give you this. It's probably wanataka weke gazeti huku ama pesa. There's nothing much to talk about the second row seat of this, but plastic paddings everywhere. It's a nice place to put a pet. But most people have seen in the forum, what they do is they take out these seats and turn, divide this piece into 2. And then upper nyuma, they turn it into a camping space where they put a lot of things like fridges, your compressor for air, for making your wheels more inflated or lower in terms of air. And these are the things that you need to have if you're planning to use this car for your off-road adventure. But if you plan to take this car and use it to take your kids to school, then this place is actually practical. You can have one child here, you can have 2 of them here. Little children can fit here comfortably and they'll have no problem. But for a huge person or an adult, I believe this will be uncomfortable. They can do, but not for long distances, okay? But in case you want a more practical option of the Suzuki Jimny, then I'll comfort you by telling you that there's a 5-door option, which has what you call an extended wheelbase, meaning you get a better sitting position or sitting area when you're carrying people on the second row of seats. And before we take this car on the road and just confirm, how does it actually feel to drive it? Is it comfortable? Is it fast? Is it slow? You know, hang on to that one. But the question is, you guys are wondering, what exactly are these things that are hanging on the roofline of this particular car? So in Japan, the guy who was using this car apparently was a fisherman. So hizi is a kuweka fishing line, right? Unazihanga hapo, unaenda adventure. That guy was living a perfect life. Kama angekuwa hapa angekuwa anaenda kufish Lake Victoria, anapata ngeke. Right? Let's drive this car and see exactly how does it translate for a guy who wants to use it or a lady who wants to use it for a normal day-to-day activity. So there's a bit of an off-road place here, and one thing I can feel already, as you can see, the Jimny is a bit bouncy, you know, when you go to off-road, but that is down to the suspension setup. So solid front beam and rear as well, but it's coil sprung. So meaning, and this car is a body on frame. So meaning you'll expect those kind of setups to happen, and it will be a bit bouncy and uneven here and there. But that's what exactly this car is meant to do, especially if you're buying it to go off-road. You know, that's what, it's a car that connects with you when you're tackling, you know, dangerous places or difficult terrain. So that's exactly what it's supposed to do. But I'm just about to get into the road. Let me experience how does it exactly feel to drive on the road, and does it translate to a good feeling for a daily driver. How does it feel to drive this car on the road? I don't know. Guys who drive the Jimny every day, I feel it's quite comfortable and easy to drive. Of course, being a cheap car, there is a lot of road noise coming into the cabin, and that is courtesy of the fact that this is supposed to be a budget car. So don't expect much from this car. But in terms of how it drives, it's not powerful. You put your feet down, all you hear is the engine and the transmission noise coming into the cabin. It's not a car you buy to rest. This is a car you drive slowly, maybe get up to 80 and just chill and relax. Okay? But I feel it's bouncy. The same vibe I had when I was driving it on an uneven surface is the same vibe I get when I'm driving on the road. But it soaks up the uneven road surfaces quite well. So if you can get over the idea of it being a bit bouncy, of being, you know, it's just here and there, but it does it comfortably. It soaks up quite smoothly, and it's a very interesting car. I've just gone over a bump there. It's a small, tiny car, you know, and it's a car that you drive for a long time and you start loving it. You start getting used to it. You start enjoying the vibe around the Jimny. You know, the problem with many people is you come from maybe a G63 or a Prado, and then you come to the Jimny, and then you expect the same feeling, or you start treating this car or judging this car from the lens of a more powerful car. This is not a car you buy for power. It's a car you buy for convenience, and the idea that in case something happens and you find yourself in difficult places, that this car can take you out of those places without a problem. Most of the problems that we have as Kenyans is, you know, you want to buy a car that is versatile. Taka gari yako nayo ushago, kwenyu ni Machakos, mahali penye ni kubaya, and you just need a tiny car that can get you there comfortably, smoothly, easily, without speeding. At the same time, it can take you out of places, or you can tackle those roads that go to very difficult terrains in Ukambani. I think this is the car for you. I believe when they are making this car, they had Kenyans in mind. So perfectly, I feel it's an awesome car. If you judge it correctly and think about it the right way, it's one of the best car money can buy right now. I propose that if you're planning to carry your kids around, I think this is the perfect car. This is what you need to get for your daily maneuvers here and there. But if you're planning to buy a car that you can race around, don't buy this car. Actually, if it starts going, it's quite easy and natural. The only struggle I know it will have is when you get on the highway and you want to speed up and maybe overtake people. I don't think this is the car you need for that. Those are the safety sensors going on. So it means, you know, I told you about Suzuki safety support. So this car is all equipped with those. So when you're going against a car, or the car is in front of you, or passengers for that, it will warn you. And if you don't brake, it has emergency brake, so it will brake for you. Quite a good feature. Quite a good feature for this setup of a car. So let me give it a score. Out of 10 for what this car is meant to do, I'll give it a solid 9 out of 10. I believe it's a solid car. Can it get to 100? I wouldn't want to try here because I need a proper long car to do that. But this particular one is not set up. Right now, the roads I'm using do not provide me an opportunity to do that. So no 0 to 100 because it might take me maybe 15 seconds in a very long road for me to get to 100. So let's keep it at that. This one at 0 to 100. Let's stick it to that. And that is it. And finally, as I wind up this video and before we talk value for money, there are a few features that I enjoy and love about this car. One of them being the auto headlights and the auto beam, meaning if you're driving on the highway at night, this car has the ability to give you a full beam automatically and lower the beam in case you meet people on the road or oncoming traffic, which is quite ideal for this setup of a car. Number two, something else that you get that is quite convenient when you buy the Suzuki Jimny is the idea that it can give you an average of anything between 9, 10 to 12 kilometers per liter, again depending on how you drive it. So fuel economy for normal daily runnings, it's a perfect car. I believe it's a blend of good and bad. It just depends with where you look at it from. But for me, I'll definitely buy the Jimny. I now understand why people like Al Karanja own this car. If you take this car, slap on your lift kit, make it more beefier, make it more aggressive, and capable to handle extreme off-road, I believe you can do both. You can daily this car for your normal drive. At the same time, when need be, you can go to serious off-road adventures like Al does. And for those who are wondering what exactly can this car do when it comes to an off-road challenge, let me allow the boys to run clips of Al Karanja and his friends and any other guy who owns a Jimny in Kenya and show you what they actually do with their Jimnys. Here is a bit of that, and then we talk about value for money and whether this car makes a value proposition. And before we talk about value for money, let me give you some few interesting things that you need to know about the Suzuki Jimny. One is the letter Jimny. The N is inversely designed or placed in that name Jimny, which is quite weird. I don't know who came up with that concept, but again, that's what you get. Number two, the Jimny has won 2 records in the Guinness World Records. And the first record is down to the highest level a car has ever gone, and that was 6,688 meters above the sea level. Literally, that's like going slightly above Mount Kilimanjaro, which is phenomenal. Like, imagine a car going up. The higher you go, the less oxygen you get in your car. But I'll comfort you knowing also that this was a modified Samurai. You remember I told you the generation of Suzukis? So this was a modified Suzuki Samurai. 6,688. The second record was just down here, Muzanzi. Our brothers here on Muzanzi, who want land without compensation. So what the record was is it won the record of most cars that turn on their lights. So a group of legends who owned the Suzukis, down from the Suzuki Samurai, the LJ, the SJ 4x4, came together in South Africa, and to commemorate that event, they turned all their lights on. And of course, it was done in the presence of Suzuki Motor Corporation as a company, and also the guys in charge of the Guinness World Records. And so they recorded that as the most number of cars that turned their lights on. So 2 records. One the other one very legendary, right? So let's talk about value for money. If you plan to buy a Suzuki Jimny, this is not a car you buy because you don't have money or you're trying to save. This is a car you buy because of, one, its legendary status globally. It's what this car means to people. And number two, it's a car you buy for what it can actually do. That's capabilities. It's a world phenomenon, and you'll find easily, like in a parking, there's a Lamborghini, there's a G-Wagon, and then there's the Jimny. So people who buy this car, people who know why they're buying it, and it's easily one of the most confusing car for guys who are thinking about value for money, guys who are thinking of why would I spend 3.6 or 3.5 million Kenya shillings? And you can even spend upwards of 4.5 million Kenya shillings if you decide to buy the 5-door configuration. So value for money, you tell me in the comments. Do you think the Suzuki Jimny is absolute value for money, or do you think it's a collector's item? I've been your host, Ibrahim Toloi, Papa Skofu. See you on the next one.